It was meant to be the most joyeux day imaginable. Sunlight, filtered through the magnificent stained glass of St. Mary's Cathedral in Austin, Texas, painted the hallowed all in vibrant hue. L'auteur mingled with soft whisper of anticipation. Guest beamed, camera flashed, and the grand organ swelled with a familiar hymn of pure, unadulterated joy. But precisely at 11h27 du matin, a Father Michael O'Connor read the ancient Bible to bestow his blessing upon the beaming young couple, a single, deafening gunshot ripped through the sacred silence. In an instant, Father Michael collapsed where he stood, before the horrified gaze of hundreds of witnesses. Within seconds, ut pandemonium erupted, engulfing the sacred house of God. Amid the piercing scream and the terrifying splinter of shattered glass, a single witness remained unmoved. A police car 9, a magnifique Belgian Malinois named Rex, stood sentinel by the altar. HIS hero acutely raised, his powerful nose twitching, already detecting a sinister truth no human could yet grasp, this wasn't merely a murder. This was a meticulously orchestrated message. Sunday morning in Austin often held a peculiar, hopeful stillness a qui promised that, perhaps, life could offer a fresh start. Inside St. Mary's Cathedral, that promise didn't just glow, it radiated with blinding brilliance. Erected over a century ago, UT's formidable limestone walls and towering Gothic arch presented a breathtaking spectacle, if lifted straight from a cherished postcard. It stood a bastion of tranquility, a sacred refuge amid the clamor of modern Texas life. That particular morning, the cathedral positively shimmered with vibrant life. Polished row of pews gleamed under the soft, inviting glow of chandelier. Immaculate white rose, fragrant and delicate, lined the hall, their sweet perfume intertwining subtly with the ancient scent of incense. Guests murmure with eager anticipation, while children, resplendent in their finest new attire, squirmed with barley content excitement. This was the wedding of Emily Turner, the cherished only daughter of David Turner, a formidable banking magnate, renowned in equal measure for his philanthropy and the swirling controversy that often shadowed his name. The guest list read like a veritable who's who of Texas high society, influential politician, shrewd investor, and prominent media figure, all converging under this sacred roof to witness what local papers had already boldly proclaimed the wedding of the year. Yet, for the devoted parishioner who graced these pews every Sunday, the profoundest joy stemmed from seeing Father Michael O'Connor once more at the altar. He transcended the role of a mere priest, he was their devoted shepherd, a man who that led him more frequently into the stark reality of shelter and hospital ward than to the quiet comfort of his own rectory. He possessed an extraordinary gift. HIS word possessed a unique power, capable of mending wounds far beyond the reach of any doctor. Countless souls, adrift and disillusioned, testified that Father Michael had, without over persuasion, somehow rekindled their lost faith. He simply embodied his teaching, humility, boundless compassion, and unwavering truth. The choir, a hushed presence near the transept, rehearsed softly, the organist has fingé gently tracing the ethereal opening note of an Ave Maria. Outside, the morning sun poured through the ancient stained glass panel, painting the pristine marble floor with delicate, shifting pattern of red and blue like divine brush stroke, bestowing an unspoken blessing upon the unfolding scene. Emily's mother, overcome with emotion, delicately dabbed her eyes. Reporter, despite explicit instruction note to film, discreetly repositioned their camera, their lens glinting. David Turner, the bride's father, offered a smile of immense pride, to be told a subtle, almost practiced quality. At the altar, Father Michael adjusted his pristine white vestment, took a slow, centering breath, and whispered a brief, silent prayer. No one, absolutely no one, knew it would be his last. From the very back of the sprawling church, a lone man in a stark grey suit stood unnervingly still to still. HIS gaze was riveted, not upon the radiant bride or the eager groom, but solely on the ancient Bible cradled in Father Michael's hand. The stained glass light cascaded over him, yet his face remained chillingly obscured within the deep shadow of a massive pillar. The organ swelled, UT's powerful crescendo filling the sanctuary. The congregation, in a wave of collective reverence, slowly rose to their feet. Yet, within that rising tide of collective joy, the air itself seemed to carry an invisible current, unspoken tension no one could quite identify. It was a creeping darkness that had waited, silently and patiently, for this precise moment. In mere second, that fragile joy would be violently, irrevocably shattered. Detective James Cole had witnessed far too much in his career to ever entertain the notion of coincidence. 22 grueling years in law enforcement had hammered home a singular, brutal truth, evil rarely announced its presence with a fanfare. Instead, it lurked insidiously behind polite smiles, impeccable tuxedo, and even the pristine lace of a wedding veil. That morning, positioned near the cathedral's discreet side entrance, James meticulously scanned the surging crowd, his gaze honored by the key, relentless discipline of a man who had long since forgotten the sensation of being truly off duty. Beside him, Rex, his formidable K9 partner à Belgian malinois with piercing, intelligent eyes and the qualed, restless stillness of a veteran soldier sat poised. Rex had been rigorously trained to detect everything from volatile explosive to the faint trace of gun oil residue. But today, his instincts were honed to an almost preternatural sharpness. From the very instant they stepped into the echoing vastness of St. Mary's, Rex's powerful nose began to twitch, his ear flicking agitatedly towards the distant altar, then up to the shadowy rafter, as if sensing an invisible menace that lay beyond the grasp of human perception. Easy, boy, James murmure, a comforting and running along the dog's muscled neck. Yet, the dog didn't relax. His gaze remained locked straight ahead, un wavering and un blinking. For James, this was an ominous sign, a silent alarm bell. Animal, amused, often possessed an innate clarity, perceiving truth that jaded, faithless men had long since ceased to notice. The detective's eyes drifted towards the front pews. There sat David Turner, impeccably polished as always, his silver cufflink catching the light like miniature, deceptive mirror. James knew that face intimately. Et dessine it en blason across countless charity billboard, and once, discreetly, within a confidential field detailing financial irregularity. But that, he told himself, was not his concern today. He was here to maintain order, nothing more. Or so he tried to convince himself. The Schwar began a new hymn, UTS melody waving through the air. Rex, once again, lifted his head, ear sharply pricked. His intense gaze fixated on a cluster of unassuming sound equipment positioned near the right-hand column of the altar, a peculiar, almost obsessive focus. James frowned, registering the detail mentally, but swiftly dismissed the unsettling thought as the organ's powerful shores began to swell once more. He had learned to implicitly trust his dog's instinct, yet he had also learned the hard lesson of not derailing an entire wedding ceremony over a mere good feeling and a soft growl. Moment laté, Father Michael emerged behind the altar, his pristine white vestments seeming to glow with an almost ethereal light beneath the streaming sunlight. A palpable calm descended upon the vast crowd. For a fleeting, precious second, James experienced a sensation he hadn't known in years, genuine peace. He glanced at Rex, whose powerful chest rose and fell in a slow, steady rhythm, almost as if the dog himself were engaged in silent prayer. But beneath that deceptive calm, Rex's nostrils flared once more, detecting a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in the air, a chilling scent of metal and smoke, a harbinger of violence yet to erupt. And somewhere, impossibly high above the hallowed altar, a gloved finger slowly, inexorably began to tighten on a trigger. The cathedral, at that moment, had never appeared more resplendent. The glorious morning light painted the ancient pews in rich hue of amber and molten gold. Emily Turner, a vision of ethereal radiance in her intricate lace gown, glided slowly down the aisle, her hand trembling ever so slightly in her father's firm grip. The air itself seemed to vibrate with that unique, hushed only found in ancient church wedding where every whispered breeze felt like a sacred prayer, and every subtle sound echoed with the weight of an eternal promise. Father Michael O'Connor waited patiently at the altar, a gentle, knowing smile gracing his lips. He had united dozens of couple in holy matrimony through his lifetime, yet this particular ceremony felt distinct, carrying an inexplicable, heavy significance. He had known Emily since she was a mere child, a sweet little girl who would meticulously sketch angels in the Sunday school room while her powerful father engaged in hushed business discussion with the diocese board. She had always expressed a desire for a wedding suffused with light. And now, encircled by the dancing flame of countless candles and the kaleidoscopic brilliance of stained glass, her wish seemed to have been granted. The Schwarez voices blended into a solemn prayer. The mighty organ filled the entire sanctuary with music so profoundly moving that even the hardened detective near the back momentarily forgot to breathe. James Cole remained utterly silent, his eyes riveted on Father Michael, a man who exuded a profound, otherworldly calm, a peace that seemed to transcend his troubled world. Beside him, Rex emitted a low, key whine, his powerful muscle quelled and tense beneath his fur, as if sensing an impending storm invisible to all other. In the front pew, David Turner clasped his hands together, his eyes half closed, yet his jaw remained visibly rigid. The discreet camera lights from guest phone cast fin, ethereal dance across the polished marble floor. Every single lance in the cathedral was pointed, expectantly, towards the radiant bride and the serene man in white. Father Michael slowly raised the Bible, his voice, steady and resonant, carrying effortlessly through the vast expanse of the cathedral. Love is patient. Love is kind. Emily smiled through a veil of joyful tears. Daniel reached for her trembling hand. The organ held one final, long, exquisitely trembling note. A lone dove, startled, fluttered near the ancient ceiling beam. And then, in that impossibly fragile stillness that suspended moment between one heartbeat and the next, something cold, something utterly mechanical and the voice of grace, brutally shattered the silence of heaven. The zenith of grace had been reached, and in the very next breath, it would be irrevocably annihilated. The sound that should have followed was joyeux laughter. It should have been the soft, contented murmur of guests, the delicate clanking of wedding ring, the symphony of pure elation. But instead, it came, a sharp, violent crack that tore through the ethereal music like a bolt of lightning. One deafening gunshot. Then, absolute, terrifying silence. The mighty organ abruptly silenced mid-core. Every single breath in the cavernous space froze solid. For a horrifying heartbeat, no one comprehended the atrocity that had just unfolded. Then, Father Michael staggered backward, his hands instinctively clutching the Bible, a grotesque crimson bloom began to spread, slowly, inexorably, across his pristine white vestment. The sacred book slipped from his grasp, landing open upon the cold marble floor, its page fluttering with a chilling resemblance to broken wings. Emily's scream was the first, a primal, gut-wrenching sound that ricocheted through the cathedral like an apocalyptic siren. Guests, galvanized by terror, leaped from their pews. Some frantically dove for Mijé cover behind the heavy bench, while others remained frozen in utter disbelief, their eyes transfixed on the fallen priest at the altar. Detective James Cole was already in motion, his training kicking in. Everyone down, he roared, his command cutting through the burgeoning panic like a razor. He swiftly drew his weapon, his gaze sweeping frantically across the ornate balcony, the heavy side doors, the shadowy rafter. Rex, unleashed, barked with savage fury, his claws scrabbling against the polished tile and lunged desperately towards the altar step. The dog's primal instinct flared, confirming the invisible threat. The air now reeked of metal and acrid gunpowder. James' radio crackled urgently, shooter unseen. All exit being sealed. But it was already too late, chaos reigned supreme. Panicked congregants surged towards the hell snapping on stone, children wailing in terror, delicate flowers crushed beneath a stampede of fleeing feet. A colossal chandelier overhead swayed ominously, its fragmented reflection shattering across the ancient walls like falling shards of corrupted light. Father Michael, in a final, agonizing effort, tried to speak just one breath, one word but only crimson blood bubbled at his lips. Ashes gaze lifted towards the cross suspended above him, his eyes wide and strangely peaceful, as if the cacophony of the world no longer reached him. By the time James finally reached the altar, the priest's pulse was a barely discernible flute, his hand still instinctively outstretched towards the fallen Bible. On its open, sacred page, a single verse stared back at them, illuminated by the flickering candle, do not be afraid. James pressed his earpiece, his voice strained, shooter is gone. Every exit is locked down. Officers scrambled desperately, but in the unfolding chaos, Someone had meticulously cut the power to the crucial front-facing camera. The main surveillance feed instantly went black, while the backup camera struggled, merely scrambling with static. How the hell, one bewildered officer stammered. James offered no reply. He scanned the scene, he sat hammering against his rib. No shell casing, no telltale muzzle flash, no lingering silhouette. This perpetrator knew the church intimately. ETS hidden corner, ETS critical blind spot, ETS sacred, enveloping silence. Rex, meanwhile, passed in tight, agitated circle near the pulpit, his nose meticulously tracing the floor, allowing escaping him. Then, abruptly, he stopped dead still, his powerful snout sniffing intently toward the left wall, near the smaller side chapel. He barked twice, sharp and intensely focused. James immediately turned towards the sound. The smell hit him next, fin, but undeniably present gun oil and burned powder. Someone had been there, someone who had planned every single second of this atrocity. Behind them, the congregation openly wept. A woman crumpled to the floor in a dead faint. A child, innocent and bewildered, whispered, "Is Father Michael going to heaven?" A paramedic surgé forward, terre urgent mouvement à blur, the solemn bell of St. Mary's began to toll, terre mournful chime showing across a city utterly oblivious that something far darker, something truly insidious, had just been unleashed. The cathedral no longer felt like a sanctuary. It was now, unequivocally, a crime scene. Arch-yellow police tape starkly bisected the pristine marble. The acrid scent of gunpowder stubbornly clung to the air, mingling in a macabre dance with the faint, cloying sweetness of crushed flowers and melted candle wax. Father Michael's body had been reverently transported to the hospital, but the profound weight of his sudden absence still pressed down, suffocating and omnipresent. Detective James Cole stood in the sombre center of it all, his shoes slick with holy water, carelessly speed during the horrific chaos. Every echo of his footstep felt fundamentally wrong, a jarring desecration, as if something sacred had been irrevocably shattered. Rex moved silently beside him, his nose glued to the ground. The dog's breathing was rapid, deliberate, his sensitive ear twitching almost imperceptibly with every nuanced sound in the cavernous silence. James allowed him to lead, having learned long ago that sometimes, the true path to justice began not with cold evidence, but with pure, unadulterated instinct. The vast church remained unervingly dim, ETS power supply still partially severed. A solitary beam of late morning sun slanted through the shattered stained glass, spilling glittering shard of broken color over the altar step. Rex paused abruptly at the base of the pulpit, then pressed his inquisitive snout firmly against the lower wall near the left elm. He emitted a single, short, confident whine. James immediately crouched down, flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. The focused beam of light caught a faint, telltale scuff mark something undeniably resembling a bootprint, half hidden in the deep shadow near a discreet maintenance door. "Good boy," James whispered, a rare note of satisfaction in his voice. Rex barked once, his tail held stiff, his nose still meticulously glued to the corner. Behind the door lay a narrow, dusty, long unused service corridor, a hidden passage few inside the church even knew existed. The hinge bent inward, clearly forced open with recent, brutal hint. And there, half buried beneath a forgotten, antiquated hymn book, lay a single black leather glove. James carefully retrieved it with a pen, turning it slowly under the searching beam of his flashlight. The fingertip glistened faintly, ominously. Gunpowder residue et stated grimly. Call forensic. Hoover pulled that trigger just left US ter shilling calling card, but Rex was far from finished. The dog resumed his restless passing, circling the immediate area, before halting abruptly by the confessional wall, a low, guttural growl rumbling in his chest, his ear flattened in concentration. James followed the dog's unwavering stare. There, almost imperceptible, was a fin vent grill, ETS metal still subtly warm to the touch. Someone had been precisely there, close enough to take a clean shot, close enough to hear Father Michael's final, unspoken prayer. Yet, they had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a discarded glove, a faint print, and an lingering trail that reeked of smoke and profound sin. By the time the forensic team descended upon the scene, the cathedral had utterly transformed, feeling less like a hallowed house of prayer and more like a sterile, buzzing crime lab. The air humid with the high-tech whir of scanner and the relentless pop of flash photography. white-suited technician moved with almost revere precision among the ancient pews, ter gloved and delicately brushing as it the scattered petal of forgotten rose. Detective James Cole stood near the altar, a silent, grim observer as the expert meticulously dusted the exact spot where Father Michael had tragically fallen. He had processed dozens of shooting in his carry, but never one executed with such chilling, clinical precision. There was no telltale shell casing, no discernible flash marks, no clear visible trajectory. It was as if the bullet had materialized from thin air, fulfilled its lethal purpose, and then vanished just as swiftly. The forensic lead, Dr. Melissa Grant, crouched beside the pulpit, carefully holding the black leather glove Rex had unearthed. Gunpowder residue, she confirmed quietly, her voice grave. High density composition, military grade. She straightened, her gaze unwavering as she made James's eyes. This wasn't some impulsive voted with a hanguin, detective. Hoover feared that shot knew exactly what they were doing. James exhaled slowly, the implication chilling. A professional, he stated. Melissa nodded grimly. We also recovered trace fiber coated in the Van Grill, synthetic, anti-static the kind typically found in specialized stealth suits. And then there's this. She held up a small evidence bag, revealing a thin dusting of white powder, magnesium carbonate. It's what Klimbe used to keep their grip DRY. James frowned, a new, unsettling image forming in his mind. Klimbe, or infiltrator? Exactly, she echoed. Someone scaled their way in, most likely through the whole organ shaft. It provided a direct, unseen route right behind the altar wall. James looked up, his eyes tracing the impossibly high architectural lines. The cathedral sailing so hard at dizzying 50 feet overhead, a labyrinth of ancient arch and narrow, hidden crawl spaces. Anyone intimately familiar with the cathedral's century-old architecture could move with ghostly precision, entirely unseen, high above the unsuspecting congregation. It was a perfect sniper's nest. Too perfect. Across the echoing nave, Rex sat in stoic silence, his intelligent eyes tracking the investigator, almost as if he understood every word. The dog had outwardly calmed, but his unwavering gaze remained locked on the left transept, precisely where the hidden corridor began. That was it. That was where the shooter had patiently waited, cold, methodical, and utterly invisible. Sir, an officer's voice cut through the air from the makeshift tech station. We've managed to pull partial data from the surveillance drive. The feed covering the altar went completely black 20 seconds before the shot was fired. It was a manual override. James clenched his jaw, the implication chilling. Meaning someone on the inside knew the system intimately. The officer nodded grimly. Or was paid a FT soon to know it. James walked slowly towards the altar once more, his distorted reflection wavering in the polished marble floor. Above him, the colossal crucifix loomed, a stark, agonizing silhouette of Christ, forever frozen in suffering, staring down at the now blood-stained tiles below. James whispered, half to himself, half to the silent, tormented image. This wasn't a vengeance, he articulated, his voice hollow. This was a message. Rex tilted his head, whining softly, half in agreement. James crouched, resting a reassuring hand on the dog's powerful shoulder. Hoover did this, boy, didn't he just come for a man of God? He looked up at the cross again, his eyes narrowing with dawning understanding. They came for something new. By Monday morning, the lurid headline screamed from every newspaper, dominated every news cycle, priest shot during wedding, motive still unknown. News van, a relentless convoy of media, lined the streets outside St. Mary's Cathedral. But inside the sterile confine of the process, Detective James Cole had long since stopped bothering with the papers. He didn't need the sensationalist media to confirm what his gut instinct already screamed, this was no random act. Someone, who is malicious, wanted Father Michael silenced. At the formidable evidence board, a grim mosaic of crime scene photo was meticulously arranged. The fallen Bible, the discarded glove, the hominu van, the terrified face frozen in time all stark reminded. But now, a new, pivotal piece of evidence commanded the center, a printed email thread, meticulously recovered from Father Michael's office computer. James read alou, his voice low and strained, you were warned, Father. Stop asking questions about the relief fund. Some blessing come with a price. The email had originated from an encrypted server, routed meticulously through Europe. No traçable IP, no signature. Yet, attached was a spreadsheet a shilling ledger fee with suspicious transfer originating from the St. Mary's Relief Fund, a supposedly benevolent charity established to aid desperate hurricane victim in Louisiana. Except, the money never reached the TS intended recipient. Dr. Melissa Grant, her face grim, scrolled through the damning record. A staggering $2 million had been illicitly moved in and out of shadowy offshore account, disguised under various church subsidiary. Someone, with cold calculation, had brazenly exploited the charity network to launder illicit funds. James rubbed his temple, the piece clicking into place. And Father Michael found out et murmure. Melissa nodded, confirmation etched on her face. He was actively trying to report it. We found a draft letter to the Archdiocese, Ins. Rex, lien quietly nearby, suddenly lifted his head, his ear twitching, almost as if reacting to the name Michael. James offered a faint, sad smile. Guess he liked him too, he whispered. The nervous sound technician who had worked the wedding was quickly brought in for questioning. HIS en visibly trembling, his composure finally shattered under the relentless pressure. He didn't know they kill him, he stammered, tears welling in his eyes. They just told me to shut off the altar camera, said it was for security. They paid me $10,000 in cash. I swear to God, he didn't pull the trigger. Who told you? James's voice was sharp, unyielding. The man hesitated, his eyes darting fearfully to the floor. Someone from the church board. Named I. James felt the familiar, sickening chill of betrayal seep into his bones. Richard I. The very name listed a treasury of the Cathedral's Charitable Trust, a man the entire city revered a pillar of philanthropy. He turned slowly towards the evidence board, Father Michael's gentle photo staring back at him, now chillingly juxtaposed beneath the stark word, motive. The priest had been on the precipice of exposing something profoundly unholy, meticulously hidden behind the shimmering facade of stained glass and solemn sermon. Goddess House, James whispered, almost to himself, a bitter truth settling in his gut, was the perfect cover. Rex's stealthy tones, a subtle movement, a if in silent, grim agreement. And somewhere out there, the architect of this blasphemous shame, those who had so cunningly exploited that holy cover, were already beginning to realize that their meticulously guarded secret had not died with the priest. When detective finally brought Richard I into custody, the entire diocese fell into a stunned, collective silence. This man had been an unwavering fixture in Austin's Catholic community for 2 decades, a charming, silver-haired gentleman who effortlessly shared every fundraiser, every grand charity dinner, every campaign designed to fuse face with finance. If anyone in the city had ever appeared utterly untouchable, it was Richard I. Now, he sat in the stark interrogation room, disturbingly calm, his unfolded neatly on the table, his prominent gold cross gleaming incongruously under the harsh fluorescent light. You honestly believe he killed a priest, he asked softly, his voice laced with feigned offense. I have personally donated more to that church than you've likely earned in your entire career, detective. James leaned forward, his gaze piercing. We are not discussing your generous donation, monsieur. I. We are talking about $2 million that inexplicably vanished from your relief fund. I offered a faint, unsettling smile, one that never quite reached his cold eyes. I don't handle transfer, he stated dismissively. My assistant handle all financial transactions. And if you genuinely believe he would stoop to hearing a hitman to silence a priest, detective, then you demonstrably fail to grasp how Goddess work is truly accomplished in the real world. James studied him intently for a long, quiet moment. The man's composure was far too controlled, his tone chillingly rehearsed. Yet, beneath the veneer, there was something else, a subtle hollowness in his voice, like a man who had already quietly accepted his capture because someone, somewhere, had instructed him to. Rex, who had been sitting with remarkable quietude by James's chair, suddenly emitted a low, guttural growl not loud, but significant enough to draw every eye in the room. Hayes gas flicked involuntarily toward the dog, and for the first time, his meticulously crafted composure visibly fractured. Just a flicker. Docteur. Grant entered the room, a discreet folder in her hand. Sir, with a cross-referenced Hayes phone record, she announced, her voice precise. There are multiple calls to a number registered under a global outreach logistic a known shell company with deep connection to offshore wire transfer. James's eyes narrowed dangerously. Who owns it? James demanded. She hesitated for a moment. A man named Frank Russo. The room fell into an immediate, profound stillness. Russo. A name James hadn't heard in years, a notorious money launderer with indeniable ties to organized crime. I exhaled, leaning back in his chair, a strange, knowing look on his face. You see, detective, I'm not the devil here. I'm merely a messenger. James locked eyes with him. Then tell me, Richard, who is truly pulling the string? Hayes' unsettling smile returned, thin, resigned, almost grateful. You'll find out, he said quietly, his voice chilling. Just make sure you're ready when you do. Rex barked once, a short, sharp, resonant sound. In the charged silence that followed, James finally grasped the horrifying truth, the man across from him was not their ultimate culprit. He was a harbinger. He was their warning. The investigation had slammed into an impenetrable wall. Every tantalizing lead circled back on itself, ephemeral offshore account, meticulously deleted email, crucial missing footage. The relentless press had already begun to openly question whether the police department was orchestrating some kind of cover-up. Inside the prison, a suffocating frustration uptick, like the oppressive humidity preceding a violent storm. Detective James Cole sat hunched at his desk, the complex caseboard glowing ominously under the harsh glare of a single, solitary lamp. Dozens of crimes and photos, intricate red string connecting fragmented clues, sprawling timeline all meticulously arranged, yet all ultimately pointing to the same maddening, unanswered question, who had actually pulled the trigger? That is when Rex began to whine. It wasn't the restless, anxious sound a dog makes when it's hungry or bored. This was a sharp, deliberate, intensely focused whine, the unmistakable sound he made when he knew something. James snapped his head up. What is it, boy? James urged, his voice hushed. Rex was pacing agitatedly near the towering evidence locker, his keen nose pressed intently against a cold metal cabinet specifically marked archive audio. James frowned, a spark of intuition igniting, and quickly unlocked it. Inside les dozens of equipment case retrieved from the cathedral, microphone, antiquated wiring, various speakers all collected in the frantic aftermath of the shooting. Rex meticulously sniffed each box, then abruptly froze near one clearly labeled sound system chapel. His ear flattened, his tail stiffened, his body tense. He barked twice, sharp and authoritative, then emitted a low, rumbling growl. James, at pounding, cautiously opened the case. Beneath a chaotic tangle of cable and layer of dust cover, nestled discreetly, was a small metal container precisely the kind used to store cleaning tools for firearms. James carefully lifted it, unlatched the clasp, and froze. Inside lay a 9mm pistol, clean to an almost spotless sheen, yet still bearing faint, thin speck of dried blood near the trigger guard. And beneath it, chillingly, an ID badge. James's stomach dropped with sickening finality. The name emblazoned across it read, Officer Ryan Mitchell, Austin PD, the very officer who had been explicitly assigned to secure the altar that tragic morning. He picked up the badge slowly, the cold metal a stark wet against his skin. Dear God, he whispered, the word barely audible. Rex sat faithfully beside him, silent, steady, half patiently waiting for permission to finally breathe again. Within hours, a visibly broken officer Mitchell was in custody, subjected to an intense interrogation. His carefully constructed composure shattered completely. He confessed to disabling the church's surveillance camera and deliberately allowing an unknown consultant access through the secluded side corridor. He didn't know they kill him et sobbed uncontrollably, tears streaming down his face. They told me it was just for intimidation, to make him stop digging. Oui c'est they? James pressed, his voice like flint. Mitchell hesitated, his eyes glassy with terror. Aman named Russo, and Someon Hige. Someon whooped me through a company called Turner Holdings. James froze. Turner. I'm David Turner, the father of the breed. Rex emitted a single, guttural low growl, the sound echoing ominously through the cold, stark walls of the prison like a chilling prophecy. The hunt wasn't over. It was, impossibly, only just beginning. Detective James Cole had navigated the treacherous current of this business long enough to understand a fundamental, brutal truth, evil rarely lurked solely in the deepest shadow. More often than not, it donned an expansive suite, flashed a practiced smile for the camera, and proudly signed check for prestigious charity. That is precisely why, when Officer Mitchell's confession unequivocally named Turner Holdings, James fought against the sickening realization. David Turner, the seemingly grieving father of the breed, the very man who had delivered a profoundly emotional eulogy at Father Michael's vigil, praising him a beacon of light this city didn't deserve. But facts, James knew, were utterly indifferent to feeling. And the facts now led, inescapably, straight to Turner's lavish front door. Turner's opulent mansion commanded a Kiel north of Austin, UTS sprawling driveway meticulously lined with serene marble angels and ancient olive trees, painstakingly imported from Italy. Inside, every surface gleamed with an almost unsettling perfection, a life so polished it seemed engineered to conceal every single fingerprint, every trace of imperfection. The search warrant materialized at dawn. James entered with a small, specialized team, Rex leading the charge, his paw silent and purposeful on the cool, unforgiving marble floor. They began their meticulous search in Turner's lavish office, towering mahogany shelf, framed photograph depicting Turner alongside influential senator and revered bishop, and, above the grand fireplace, a resplendent golden crucifix that seemed to silently mock the bitter irony of the moment. Rex moved with unerring instinct straight to the far wall, his keen nose pressed firmly against a bookshelf that, subtly, didn't take its seat flush. Et barked once, sharp and insist. James tried to pull it. It wouldn't budge. Then, James's sharp eyes caught it, a tiny latch, cunningly disguised a decorative book spine. The panel clicked open, revealing a meticulously hidden safe. James knelt down, a sense of grim satisfaction settling over him. Turner's frantic lawyer immediately began shouting protest, but it was utterly futile. Forensic had already cracked the code. Inside, revealed in the harsh light, lay a burner phone, 2 encrypted flash drive, and a damning stack of financial ledger detailing countless offshore account number. On the phone, a series of short-coded messages, utterly damning in their brevity, camera off before noon. Mitchell clears the hell. Father must remain silent. Uzziah cover. James felt his stomach clench and twist. He didn't need a translator. These were not random instructions, these were cold, calculated order. And then came the final message, chillingly time-stamped just hours before the wedding. He refused the offer. Ended before the vow. James slowly set the phone down, his pulse hammering a violent rhythm in his ear. The implication was sickeningly clear. Father Michael had confronted Turner directly, steadfastly refusing the bribe to remain silent about the insidious laundering network. And for that unwavering integrity, he had been unequivocally condemned. Turner was brought in for questioning late that day. He denied everything initially, cool, composed, exuding the same practiced politician's charm and meticulously cultivated for years. But when presented with the undeniable evidence of the phone, the mask finally slipped. His jaw tightened visibly, his eyes hardening into twin points of cold fury. You have no idea what you're dealing with, he said, his voice venomous. You think I'm the only one involved? James leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. Then start talking, because your silence killed a priest. Turner remained stubbornly silent. Only a small, bitter smile played on his lips, the kind of grim acknowledgement men wear when they know the full truth is far too vast, too deeply entrenched, for any single courtroom tout truly contint. Behind the one-way glass, Rex sat observing, his ear twitching almost imperceptibly, I've sensing that this sprawling, intricate web of the sea had only just begun to unravel. The relentless gulf wind carried the distinct, brassing sound of salt and diesel a night inexorably descended upon Galveston Harbor. Colossal cargo crane loomed like grotesque, dark skeleton silhouetted against the bruised horizon, and the rhythmic, guttural clash of wave against the dock echoed eerily through the thick, swirling fog. Detective James Cole tightened the strap of his bulletproof vest, his eyes intently fixed on the glowing, pulsating map displayed on the truck dashboard. The final, critical phase of the operation had been set in motion. For days, they had meticulously traced the serpentine money trail, a corrupt flow that snaked through Turner Holdings and culminated directly in the hand of Frank Russo, the shadowy puppet master who had ultimately pulled the string behind Father Michael's tragic death. Confidential surveillance intercept had confirmed Russo's brazen plan, et intended to flee the country on a freighter bound for Belize, audaciously disguised a humanitarian charity shipment. Now, the sprawling dock were completely encircled. Elite SWAT teams crouched, unseen, behind massive shipping container. Sniper maintint a vigilant, silent vigil from the towering crane above. And in the deepest shadow, amid the cold still and surging sea, Rex sat perfectly still, a silent, unwavering statue. His ear twitched, his powerful nose tilted slightly toward the air, detecting a crucial truth no human could ever discern. James crouched beside him, his voice hollow whisper. You ready, partner? The dog didn't blink, his focus absolute, merely waiting. Then, the radio crackled to life, urgent and decisive, visual on target. Pier 7. ES boarding. They moved. Boots hit cold metal. Shadow sprang to life, sprinting across the dock. The previously key harbor exploded into a maelstrom of furious motion. Officer shooted sharp command, their powerful flashlight carving arch, frantic arc through the impenetrable darkness. Russo, alerted, spotted them just a moment before they could close in. Spun, a pistol suddenly materialized in his hand, brutally shoving a bewildered dock worker as he bolted desperately toward a colossal cargo container. James and two agents pursued him relentlessly down the narrow, tree-through walkway. Drop the weapon, Russo. James bellowed, his voice echoing. But the man merely looked a cold, hollow, defiant sound that grated on James's nerve. You think arresting me change anything? You'll never touch the people behind me. A gunshot cracked violently through the night air. Sparks flew from the metal railing just inch from James's face. Russo fired again, wild and desperate. James ducked behind a precarious stack of crate, returning fire with precision. An officer suddenly stumbled and fell, a bullet grazing his protective vest. Then, in a breathtaking blur of motion, Rex moved. With a sudden, explosive burst, he launched himself from the shadow, his powerful body colliding with Russo's gun arm just as the criminal aimed for a third shot. The weapon flew from Russo's hand, clattering loudly across the steel dock. Rex clamped his formidable jaws around the man's sleeve, pulling him down with a ferocious strength born of pure fury and unwavering loyalty. Hold him. James shouted, surging forward. The team swarmed in, overwhelming Russo, forcing him brutally to the unforgiving ground. Handcuffs clicked shut with a grim finality. Rex stepped back, panting heavily, his chest heaving, his intense eyes never once leaving the man who had caused such immense pain. Under relentless interrogation, hours later, Russo finally broke. He confessed everything, the elaborate bribe, the insidious network of fake charity, and how David Turner had explicitly ordered Father Michael's death to silence him permanently before his damning report could ever reach federal investigator. But one chilling line in Russo's confession resonated with James, far more than the rest. Turner wasn't the only one, Russo rasped, his voice raw. There's Someone above him. Someone who ensured no camera, no record, no witness would ever survive. James leaned back in his chair, the storm raging outside mirroring the tempest in his soul. They had captured the direct perpetrator, yes, but the true architect of this profound darkness still remained, hidden behind an impenetrable mask of power. In the corner of the interrogation room, Rex lay curled on the floor, his eyes now half closed, finally allowing himself to rest. James glanced at his loyal partner, acquired reverence in his gaze, and whispered, "You did good, partner. We brought light to one shadow. Now, we find the rest." Outside, a profound roll of thunder echoed over the tumultuous sea, if heaven itself had just struck the first, resounding blow against a vast, pervasive empire of silence. A week after the arrest, St. Mary's Cathedral cautiously reopened its allowed doors. The bulle had been meticulously patched, the shattered stained glass replaced with pristine panel. Yet, the air within still carried something irrevocably sacred, the quiet, poignant memory of a man who had died, unflinchingly, doing what was profoundly right. Detective James Cole stood near the back pew, his suit immaculately pressed, his expression sombre and reflective. At the front, a revered portrait of Father Michael O'Connor rested beside the altar, encircled by the soft glow of countless candles and the pristine purity of white lily. Above the portrait, brilliant sunlight now streamed through the fully restored stained glass window, the very window that had once cloaked and refracted the horrific, blood-red light of tragedy. Now, it bathed the altar in a shimmering, pure gold. The city officially proclaimed it a memorial mass, before James, it felt far deeper, far more significant, a quiet, profound renewal of a face he hadn't realized he still possessed. He had spent 2 grueling decades chasing shadow, pursuing criminal, and grimly counting body. But this particular case had left an indelible mark, unlike any other. Because this time, the victim was not merely a man. He was a pot symbol of virtue the world had, perhaps, tragically forgotten, unyielding truth, unwavering integrity, and profound faith. Beside James sat Rex, dignifié in a small, custom vest proudly embroidered with the seal of the Austin PD. The dog was restless for a brief moment, a subtle shift in his posture, until the soaring voices of the choir began to singulier. Then, he settled, perfectly still, his head tilted intently towards the altar, if he too were listening, deeply, to something transcend hidden within and beyond the music. When the bishop concluded the final, solemn prayer, the mayor stepped forward, a gleaming medal held reverently in his hand, catching the cathedral lights. With profound gratitude he declared, his voice resonating through the sanctuary, to Detective James Cole and Canoe Officer Rex, for their unwavering courage, their steadfast loyalty, and their relentless service to truth. A wave of heartfelt applause swelled and filled the sacred space, James gently placed a hand on Rex's strong neck. The dog looked up, his intelligent eyes bright yet calm, a silent, profound understanding passing between man and loyal beast. Together, they had fogged through unimaginable darkness and, against all odds, had found a glimmer of light. But as the poignant mass concluded, a discreet clerk from the courthouse quietly approached, handing James an unmarked envelope, no stamp, no return address. Inside, a letter, handwritten in tight, deliberate stroke, carried a chilling message, "Justice has not finished its work. The man you cooked was only the flame. The fire still burns high. A friend within." Attached was a blurred, grainy photograph. The photograph depicted a clandestine meeting room, populated by shadowy men in expensive suits. And one familiar face a prominent state official James recognized instantly. He folded the letter slowly, deliberately, the cold realization sinking in. The case wasn't over. It had only morphed, taking on a far more dangerous, expansive shape. As the crowd respectfully filtered out, James lingered by the altar. Father Michael's Bible was there again, meticulously cleaned, carefully preserved, yet still open to the very same, profound verse, "Do not be afraid." Et allowed a faint, resolute smile to touch his lips. He wanted be et murmure, a promise to himself, and to the fallen priest. Then he turned to Rex, his gaze firm. "Come on, partner. We've got more truth to chase." The dog barked once, sharp and confident, and together, man and beast, they walked purposefully into the brilliant light spilling from the cathedral doors, ready for the next battle. If this incredible story has moved you, if you still believe that light can, and will, overcome even the deepest darkness, then please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this powerful narrative from Touched by Grace. Because miracle still happen, not just through un wavering face, but some team, through astonishing courage.